England and Wales, and for the rest of the UK, it's just an area of cloud and some patchy drizzle. Meanwhile, showers push into northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and these showers will be falling as hail and sleet and snow over the hills, with some icy patches by dawn towards the north of Scotland. So watch out for those first thing, but otherwise a dull and damp start in the far south, but also a bright start for much of England and Wales as the front clears away and sunny skies return for much of the afternoon. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The blustery showers begin to ease during the afternoon, but we'll see further spots of rain in the west of Scotland and temperatures across the UK 8 to 10 Celsius. Into Thursday evening and some thicker cloud comes along in the northwest. Some high cloud further south, but actually there'll still be a frost in the south under any clear spells, and with light winds as well, of course. It will be a chilly start to Friday in the south, with temperatures away from urban centres, I think, down below zero. Further north, less cold, but a damp start for western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland. And really it stays damp across western Scotland and Northern Ireland throughout much of Friday. The rain coming and going, it will be soggiest over the hills of northwest Scotland. But elsewhere across the UK, it's largely dry. A lot of cloud cover, the best of any brightness into the weekend towards the southeast, and milder for all of us.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
President Zelensky demands combat aircraft. It looks like Sunak is going to agree. Are we doing the right thing or risking dangerous escalation? We'll look at the Prevent report, a review out on it. Are we worrying too much about right-wing extremism and not enough about Islamic extremism? A GB News exclusive into grooming gangs in the north of England that's going to make for very, very sobering viewing. And joining me on Talking Pines, comedian Daniel O'Reilly. He was pretty much the first comedian to be cancelled from UK TV, but he's managed to revive and rescue his career. We'll find out how. But all of that comes after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The Prime Minister has today confirmed the UK is accelerating the delivery of military equipment to Ukraine, so it arrives within days and weeks instead of months. In his address to Parliament earlier, President Volodymyr Zelensky requested a number of British fighter jets to bolster their defences against Russia. Speaking at a military base in Dorset earlier on today, Rishi Sunak said nothing was off the table in terms of military assistance.
All over the United Kingdom, Ukrainian men and women are learning how to command and control NATO-standard weapons, whether that is in drone warfare, tank operations, or basic training. Their dedication, courage, and determination is a credit to you and your country. And Volodymyr, your visit here today underlines our two countries' close and enduring friendship. We will always be by your side, your staunch and unwavering friends.
Meanwhile, governments and organisations around the world have been offering their support to Turkey and Syria today after the two devastating earthquakes that happened on Monday killed more than 11,000 people. The Foreign Office says 3 British people are still missing following the disaster. And Downing Street says the UK will continue to assess the situation and stand ready to provide further long-term assistance as needed. International investigators say there are strong indications that the Russian President Vladimir Putin supplied the missile which downed a Malaysia Airlines flight in 2014. 298 people were killed in the disaster, which happened over Ukrainian territory. But investigators also say the evidence isn't strong enough to lead to a criminal conviction, so they've ended their probe without further prosecutions. Russia has denied any wrongdoing. Here, the partner of the missing mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, has visited the riverbank in Lancashire where she vanished. Paul Ansell spent a few minutes in the field near the River Wire as police continued their 12th day of the search. The 45-year-old mum, who's a mortgage advisor, went missing after taking her dog for a walk. Meanwhile, the underwater rescue team, SGI, has pulled out of the search, with the CEO saying he's baffled after failing to find her. The former Labour MP Jared Amara has been found guilty of 6 counts of fraud committed whilst he was in office. The 41-year-old, who was a Member of Parliament between 2017 and 2019, was on trial for submitting fake invoices to Parliament worth around £24,000 to fund his cocaine habit. A jury cleared him of 2 other charges and sentencing will take place tomorrow at Leeds Crown Court. And lastly, an inquest into the death of Archie Battersby has concluded that he died accidentally in a prank or an experiment that went wrong. The coroner ruled the 12-year-old boy, who was found unconscious in his bedroom, had not intended to harm himself. The boy had his life support treatment withdrawn in August last year after his parents failed to overturn a High Court ruling that doctors could lawfully do so. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Time for Farage.
Good evening. Well, it was a very well-kept secret, but we learnt first thing this morning that en route to Stansted Airport was the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and there to meet him was, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and it was down to the House of Commons. He sat in the gallery through, without doubt, the politest Prime Minister's questions that I've seen for a very long time. It was then Westminster Hall, a joint session of both Houses of Parliament addressed by the Ukrainian President, and then off to Lulworth British Army camp in Dorset for a big press conference. Let's begin with the Ukrainian president giving thanks to Boris Johnson in Westminster Hall earlier on today.
I have come here and stand before you on behalf of the brave, on behalf of our warriors who are now in the trenches under enemy artillery fire, on behalf of our air gunners and every defender of the sky who protects Ukraine against enemy aircrafts and missiles. Boris, You got others united when it seemed absolutely impossible. Thank you.
Now, it's no great surprise that Zelensky came here first, because our contribution has been far bigger than any of our European neighbours. He's off to visit them next. So, big acknowledgement towards Boris Johnson and towards Rishi Sunak. But here's the real message. The real message of today's trip was thank you for what you've done, but we need more. We need combat aircraft. Here was Zelensky.
I trust this symbol will help us for our next coalition of the planes, and I appeal to you and the world with simple and yet most important words. Combat aircrafts for Ukraine, wings for freedom.
Now, Boris Johnson, in the wake of that, said we should send 100 Typhoon jets to Ukraine. It would seem Boris Johnson actually would send every bit of military equipment we've got to Ukraine right now and leave nothing with us. Rishi Sunak, after that request from the Ukrainian president, said he had ordered the Ministry of Defence to investigate what fighter jets we may be able to send. And bear in mind, there is training on those jets already underway. And here was the response. Here was the public response we got from Rishi Sunak in Lulworth just an hour ago.
The Challenger tanks are going to be on the battlefield, as I said, in a matter of weeks. I mean, you've seen the Ukrainian soldiers being trained on them as fast as we can, and we're providing them as fast as we can, and we know that they will make a difference. And I think the President would tell you, we've been having conversations for the few months that I've had this job, and relatively rapidly after we discuss what is necessary, Ukraine sees that we do respond, and then we galvanise others to respond too. That's what we have done, and that's what we'll continue to do.
So the message is very clear. We take the lead and we galvanise others to follow. It's pretty clear that we are going to be committing some of our jets. My debate, my question tonight is, are we doing the right thing or risking a dangerous level of escalation? Give me your thoughts, please, Farage at gbnews.uk. I'm joined by Con Coughlin, defence editor of the Daily Telegraph, and Henry Bolton, of course, international security expert and border control man. Let's begin, Con, with you. You were saying quite clearly the other day that you felt NATO's response ought to be stronger, that perhaps even Boris Johnson play a bigger role on the world stage. Are you happy that we're now about to move, it would seem, to be sending combat jets to Ukraine?
Well, yes, I do think very strongly we should give Ukraine all the help we can. Ukraine has the right under the UN Charter to get its allies to provide military equipment. I think so long as British pilots aren't flying British jets against Russia, we avoid the escalation. I mean, the Russians have been escalating from day one. And, they are clearly determined to continue this war. And Ukraine needs to have more equipment to prevail. And I think it's in the West's interest that Ukraine sees off this Russian threat. So anything we can do to help the Ukrainians, I do support.
So we give artillery kit, we give anti-aircraft kit, we give tanks, we now give planes. Why not men if that's their next request?
Well, that I think is the red line for me.
That's the red line?
That's the red line for me.
And are you worried about the amount of equipment we're sending?
No, I think so long as the equipment is used by the Ukrainian military,
all right,
that is the big difference. And I think give them as much kit as they need. I mean, this is a very important war in terms of the long-term Western security. If we let Russia get away with this, there'll be profound implications for our security and NATO's security further down the line.
Henry Bolton, Boris wants to send every piece of kit we've got. Surely we have to keep something in reserve, don't we, in a very uncertain world?
I mean, I agree with Con. We cannot allow Putin to win this war. The implications would be massive for European security. And I actually believe that if Putin is allowed to consolidate on Ukrainian territory, that's not the end of it. And I think inevitably, if he's not pushed out of Ukraine in this war, then we will see a later war, which will inevitably be a Putin taking on NATO. And that will be a far, in terms of blood and treasure.
Wouldn't he be insane to do that?
Not if he's got the West brokering a peace agreement that allows him to present this as victory to the Russian people. Now, but to answer your question, well, first of all, to prevent Putin winning this war, the Ukrainians need to have help. We're in a consolidation and regrouping phase at the moment, in expectation on both sides of offensive operations coming in the next couple of months.
Some kind of spring offensive.
Yeah, indeed. And both sides are now incorporating the lessons learned from the first year of war to regroup, reorganise, rearm, re-equip, retrain, and get out there so that they're ready to meet each other's offensives and launch their own in the coming months. Now, to meet those Russian offensives, then the Ukrainians are going to need significant help. And that's why the timing of this is important. What I worry about is that, yes, there is a risk. I think the risk of taking on Putin through Ukraine now is less than doing nothing, a great deal less. It would be a lot more risky.
Well, there's some agreement between the two of you there.
But the danger is that if we provide him with all the kit without backfilling our own, then we will leave ourselves naked if this war does escalate into another geographical dimension.
And that was a point that Labour Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey was making yesterday. I thought it was quite an interesting intervention politically by him. Con, I keep reading stuff in the press. I keep hearing Boris saying, when we beat Putin, we must beat Putin, we will beat Putin. Whenever the Russian army moved back, behind the Dnieper River or whatever, it's presented as a huge withdrawal. The Ukrainians are taking Kherson. I mean, to read the British press, you would think the Ukrainians are winning this war hands down. Actually, situation's a lot more complex than that. Isn't the truth of this that this could go on for years?
That's how it looks to me at the moment. Yeah. The Ukrainians had a good end of year last year, and they took some important strategic positions in the north and the south. But when you look at the map, they've reclaimed about 10% of the territory that the Russians took way back in 2014. They're nowhere near retaking Crimea. And so when the Ukrainians say they're going to fight until they reclaim every bit of Ukrainian soil, you do wonder whether that's realistic. And given the divisions within the NATO alliance, I'm not sure there's much support for that Ukrainian position within the NATO alliance.
Well, this is what I think. I mean, Henry Bolton, at some point, doesn't everybody have to accept that Crimea is not going back to Ukraine?
Well, I think Crimea...
There needs to be a peace settlement of some kind.
Connor's just implied that Crimea is some way down the road before we can look at that. I think the first thing is what I would call the land bridge, the Crimean land bridge from Russia down to Crimea on the North Black Sea coast. Now, can the Russians hold that? If they can hold that, then Ukraine is solid. Crimea is solid. If the Ukrainians can break through that at some point, in the coming year or whenever to the Black Sea coast, then it becomes less easy for the Russians to hold onto Crimea. I think what we're seeing. I mean, I'm going to use the analogy of World War II because I think in terms of the future of Europe's security laydown, and Zelensky today referred to future European security architecture. I don't think he's wrong. I mean, this war is going to define what happens for decades security-wise in Europe going forward. And I think...
But doesn't it show that Europe itself is very disunited?
Oh, indeed. I mean, now it's not... We haven't got the time now to talk about the origins of this war and the energy side of it and the gas sort of fields and so on involved. But it's a major... If we look at that, then indeed, the part of the reason why Putin, I think, thought he could get away with this was lack of consensus within the European continent relating to what sort of reaction there should be. But I think that I'm going to use the analogy of World War II because I don't think it's inappropriate. We've got much the same sort of approach from Russians as we had from Nazi Germany in terms of the way they've approached this. But 1940, we were very much on the back foot. We were begging the United States for support and help. Thank God the United States provided it. Ukraine will be saying much the same thing now about the Allies providing Ukraine with equipment. And we've got to... But we never had that knowledge as to how it's going to pan out. It was risky, but we couldn't afford to lose.
No, of course.
And that's where we are now. I agree with Con entirely. This is going to be a long war.
Well,
and anybody who says otherwise is wrong.
No, I'm convinced of
that. And there are
that.
implications for our defence policy going forward as a result.
And I think much of the British press has been irresponsible, frankly, in the way that it's been saying.
Not the Daily Telegraph.
No, fine, but I think much of it has. Final quick thought, Con, if I may. If you are right, and I'm worried we're getting deeper and deeper into this, perhaps more than you are, but where we are all agreed is this is going to get bigger and bigger. More and more equipment is going to be demanded. Isn't it time that we had a sharp, short increase in defence spending in this country?
Undoubtedly. I mean, we have to. I mean, the fact we've sent 14 Challengers and the Army's saying that it's on its knees in terms of military capability. I mean, Boris says send 100 British warplanes. We've only got 100 British warplanes.
Exactly.
So that's nonsense. And, of course, there's a lot of Boris grandstanding going on with Rishi. In terms of the conflict, I mean, the one factor we haven't discussed tonight is just how long can Russia sustain this conflict. And, you look at the Russian economy, you look at the losses in men and equipment the Russians have suffered. This is a very brittle force. And whether they've mobilised 500,000 conscripts or not...
Which is what we believe.
Which is what we're being told, and that's the Russian propaganda. But are they combat ready? Are they really going to make a difference? And if they just use them in a sort of First World War slaughterhouse tactic, then that's not going to last for very long. And I think, if the Ukrainians can sustain the gains they made at the end of last year through to the summer, Putin will be in trouble.
I mean, one of the things here is that in major conflicts of this sort, it has been proven time and time again that the side with the most depth economically survives. Now, Ukraine doesn't have it alone. It needs the support of its allies to do that. And General Richard Sheriff said the British government has not been listening. It needs to listen now.
Well,
we need to backfill the equipment that we're providing.
I think that's the one point that comes out more clearly to me than anything from this is we need a very rapid increase in defence procurement. Very rapid indeed. In a moment, we'll talk about the review into the Prevent programme, which seems to think that right-wing extremism poses a much bigger threat than Islamic terrorism. We'll discuss all of that in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest,
balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So, following that debate, are we doing the right thing in sending more and more military kit to help Ukraine, or are we risking some kind of escalation? Some of your thoughts. One viewer says, I'm not sure. A country can sell military goods to any country, but I believe this is aid. You're right, this is aid, and thus far, it's been about £2.5 billion worth of military aid. And he goes on to say Russia involves help from Belarus, Iran, Korea, possibly China. What's the difference? Difference is, matey, we're involved in this one. Harvey plainly says no. Chris says, yes, get those planes in the Ukrainian skies bombing Russian forces. And Sean reflects a view that we hear very little of in terms of public debate, but it's out there in the country. Sean says, no, World War III is on the horizon. Now, Prevent. This was the programme put in place to try and deal with terrorism, a counter-terrorism measure. And it's been up for a big review that is out today. How's it doing? Well, Peter Blexley, former Metropolitan Police detective. Peter, from what I can see of the review of this report, it's quite critical of the way that Prevent has operated. It is suggesting that it has prioritised what it sees as right-wing extremism bordering on terrorism more than potential Islamic terrorism. Would that be a reasonable interpretation of where we are?
Very much so, and the report then goes on to say that the focus needs to be on Islamic terrorism without taking the eye off the ball of right-wing extremism, and goes on to explain that some people that have held really quite mainstream views, perhaps if they're vocal with regards to concerns about huge numbers of immigrants coming to the UK, might almost have flicked some switches so that they would have become under the gaze of the Prevent programme, which of course is a shift that shouldn't have been there. So 34 recommendations, and Suella Braverman has said she will take them all on board. Let's sincerely hope she acts upon them and doesn't merely doff her cap to them. But I think there's a subtext to all of this, if I may, which really pollutes and pervades so much of public services. And that is people are afraid of the uncomfortable truth. For example, that there's some ideology in Islam which wants to wipe us from the face of the earth. But because there are questions and concerns about people's race and their faith, they won't be as robustly challenged as perhaps they should be. And of course, we know that's happened within policing, where we've had grooming gangs that have simply not been tackled because, again, people's fear about race. If you're going to do your job and you do it properly without fear or favour, what really is the issue?
So you're suggesting that Prevent, despite the very best of intentions when it was set up, and Theresa May was a very big champion of all of this as Home Secretary, you're suggesting that Prevent, frankly, has been politicised.
And I fear that some people have become afraid of saying what the truth is and tackling that truth robustly, fairly, properly. And it's only really of late that it's come to light that some organisations have taken Prevent funding and they haven't prevented the spread of the ideology. In fact, some have been found to perhaps further that ideology. So we really need open, honest debate, and those who are involved with trying to prevent people blowing us all to smithereens to act without fear or favour.
And on the right wing, terrorism stuff, let's not pretend it doesn't exist, because it does exist.
Yes.
You know, you made the point that actually some people have come under the purview of this that never should have done for free and open mainstream debate. But of course there are still risks, aren't there, of extremists on the far right with assault rifles and all the rest of it.
Very much so, and we've seen people quite rightly sent to prison for their acts of violence or their ideology. And that is only right. And of course, we've heard from the security services talking about the very real threat of right-wing ideology. So we can't afford for these organisations to take the eye off the ball in any way, shape or form,
But we may have over-egged it.
Yes, I think so, and it's to a certain extent, it's been batted around a bit like a tennis ball, being whacked from one court to another.
Peter Blexley, as ever, very easy to understand. Thank you very much indeed. In a moment, we're going to show you a GB News Special Investigations Report. Do you remember when that story broke about Rotherham and the grooming gangs back in 2014? It made many of us feel sick to the bottom of our stomachs. We simply couldn't believe it was happening in this country. Well, maybe you thought it had all gone away. Maybe you thought it was all over. Well, GB News' Charlie Peters has a special documentary coming out this weekend. We'll preview it in just a moment.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm joined by documentary maker Charlie Peters. Charlie, you've been working for many, many months on a documentary. It's going to be shown on GB News at 8 p.m. for its first viewing this Saturday evening. I mentioned before the break the incredible shock much of the country got about the scale of grooming gangs in those northern and Midlands.
Yes.
towns and cities. What have you found out?
Well, I went into the investigation a year ago expecting to just cover what we already knew, but with some fresh, honest analysis. I think you'll agree that when this story broke a decade ago, it was not treated with the level of interest and focus that it should have been done by the establishment and the media at the time. Difficult questions were kicked into the long grass and analysis was muted. The Home Office report into grooming gangs released a few years ago was, I think, a bit of a whitewash. So I wanted to deal with that and go over what we already knew, but with a new, fresh set of thinking. Unfortunately, what I found is that actually there is a lot more to uncover, and nobody else is really on the story anymore. So
more to uncover from the past, or more to uncover that's going on now?
With tremendous regret, what's going on now. And viewers can tune in on this Saturday at 8 p.m. to find out some more of what that means, unfortunately. And indeed also more of what was going on in the past. I think there has been an insufficient degree of investigation from much of the establishment media to really dive into the depths of this horrifying story, and that has allowed perpetrators to go unpunished, and indeed those who supported them through their own institutional failure to go without accountability. One of the exclusives we ran last month on GB News was that a man who was forced to resign from Rotherham Council in 2015 due to being part of a council that was in denial, 8 years later, we uncovered that he is now a diversity and inclusion manager in the NHS. Yes, paid £50,000 a year to lecture on inclusion, and he was the cabinet member for community cohesion in Rotherham when he was alleged to have pushed away difficult conversations about grooming gangs in the town. He did this for the best part of a decade, and still, 2 decades on, no accountability, no punishment, still paid for by the state, and he's gotten away with it because nobody else is looking into it. Well, we are, and what we've uncovered, I think, will shock your viewers.
Well, let's just see a quick clip, a little preview of what you're going to see this Saturday evening at 8 o'clock.
I don't smoke, drink or do drugs, and I've escaped that life. I have a daughter, but the men who raped me in Telford in South Wales are still living there, still working there, still running the kebab houses. My life was ripped to shreds, but theirs have barely changed.
Charlie Peters, was it difficult to get people to talk?
It was, and the voice you just heard there was an actor, of course, but the story behind that actor's voice, you know, she's utterly terrified of speaking to journalists because she has been struggling for decades with her experience, but her perpetrators, as she says, are still free, are still working in Telford, are still working in South Wales, and she has been left feeling unsafe for years. And so developing trust with these survivors takes a long time because they have so many reasons not to trust journalists, not to trust the establishment who've let them down for so long.
One of the most difficult aspects of this, from what I understand of it, is that in some of these northern towns, it has been predominantly one particular community, hasn't it?
Yes. The nervousness around race and ethnicity has absolutely contributed to the failure to act at the time and the failure to review and honestly discuss the issue now. We do not approach this issue with that same nervousness. We are honest, we paint the facts as they are, and we produce some compelling analysis on that, I believe.
What do you hope, Charlie, to get out of this?
Well, we certainly need to restart a national conversation that we never had at the time in 2012 when the lid blew off this scandal. But also we need more than just conversation. We certainly need action now. The NCA, the National Crime Agency, is still investigating Rotherham, where it has uncovered even more victims from the original 1,500 to, up to 2,000 possibly from whistleblowers on the ground. It is true. The scale is truly shocking. We want more independent National Crime Agency investigations across the country because GB News Investigates has uncovered up to 50 different towns and cities where we believe there are credible reports of grooming gangs. We need to look at them seriously. We need more independent investigations. We need more police action, and we need this on government level too. Until that happens, thousands, possibly tens of thousands, women and girls will be still waiting for justice.
Charlie Peters, brave work, brave journalism. I look forward to seeing this. Well, I don't look forward to it at all, actually, but I will watch it at 8 o'clock this Saturday. Thank you for coming in, giving us that preview. Now, yesterday, one of the big surprises was that Lee Anderson, the Conservative Member of Parliament, former miner, he represents Ashfield up in Nottinghamshire, has become a deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. Here was Lee a couple of weeks ago talking to Lois Perry about the British Civil Service.
Do you think that it could be argued that the civil service are blocking us being energy independent?
Yeah, quite likely. Yeah,
really.
It's the civil service. It's the lobbyists. It's sometimes our own party which are too scared to take a side. And I'm sorry, in politics, you have to take a side.
That's what it's
you
all
always
about.
Have to take a side, and
So isn't it interesting then that you're...
And you can see that interview in full on the Car26 YouTube channel. Lee Anderson has so much to say. Well, all I can really predict is that if Lee Anderson is going to be as plain-spoken about the civil service and much else in life as a deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, it is going to be a wild, interesting and fun ride. It might not last long, but it's going to be really great value. And, the what the Farage moment. We learn, and it's been going on for a couple of years, and we know, of course, that the Church of England has virtually been taken over by Marxist bishops. Now we hear there is serious debate about regendering, yes, regendering God. In fact, they're actually considering getting rid of our Father who art in heaven. Yes, we're going to have a gender-neutral. God will no longer be the Father, it'll be them or they. All I can say is the Church of England have let us down again and again and again. This appalling Archbishop Welby. Is it any wonder the congregations are so empty at the weekends? And I know that it's an established church in this country and the King is at the head of it, but frankly, if they go on like this, I cannot see any point to their further existence. Now, in a moment, on GB News, on Talking Pints, I'm going to be joined by Daniel O'Reilly. Now, he was cancelled by ITV for saying something on air that perhaps wasn't as funny as he intended it to be. But he's managed to salvage his career and rise from the ashes. In a moment, we'll find out how.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest,
balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Daniel O'Reilly, aka Dapper Laughs, comedian. Welcome to Talking Pints.
How you doing? Good to be back on TV.
Well, given that you were banned, and quite rightly, really. Yeah. Now, listen.
Straight in there. Yeah. No.
Daniel, you were, young comedian.
Yeah.
Doing well.
Yeah.
Building your reputation.
Yeah.
Possibly pushing the edges a bit.
Yeah, I did. I pushed, a lot. I think it's tricky being a comedian. It's very tricky being young and immature and a comedian. Do you know what I mean? It's we all say stupid things when we're younger. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, I was on a big platform on a big TV show and said some ITV2. Yeah, made some mistakes, said some silly stuff. And luckily, I've been lucky enough really that I'm social media based and I've got a really loyal social media following. They know that there was, I've got a big following.
Right, let's just get back to this for a second.
Yeah, go on.
So what you said was blooming stupid.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty insulting to a woman in the audience. I mean, you admitted it was wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff was taken out of context at the time, but I still said stupid stuff, yeah. It was blown well out of proportion, but I did say some stupid stuff, yeah. And, looking back on it, it upset a lot of people. But again, I was young and I was trying to be controversial, I think, at the time.
So you get cancelled?
Get cancelled, yeah.
Suddenly, the chance to go and do gigs around the country.
Yeah, it was more than that. My TV show got cancelled. 60,000 people signed a petition to when I think back on it, it's...
Yeah, I was one of them. No, go on.
Yeah. God, it's a good thing I'm not drinking anymore. We could have a wild argument. No, but, but I've got two daughters now, so if I heard a comedian saying that sort of stuff back then, I probably too would have kicked off. And, but I lost a lot from it, and rightly so maybe at the time, but I felt it was a little bit harsh. And I lost the TV show, lost my management, lost all my gigs, lost all my money, lost my house, lost my sanity, and
your life spiraled down into a pit, didn't it?
Yeah, and my mental health for apart, and I learned a lot of lessons through it. And I think drink was that's why I'm sober now. Drinking, I was very much part of the drink and party culture and sesh culture and everything growing up, and that was my coping mechanism through it, and that got really out of control. Yeah. So go on, sorry.
No, when you've, and we all have ups and downs in life.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
But this was a pretty big down, Daniel, that you were going through here.
Yeah, it's horrific.
How did you manage to bottom out? Was it therapy? What was it that managed to turn you around?
I think, like a lot of famous people say, like Tyson Fury and things like that, like you can only sort of start making your way up once you hit rock bottom. And I became heavy into the drinks. I was suicidal at one point, and my father passed away. It's a very real dark time, and I don't know, I lost control of a lot of things in my life, and I just had to get through that stage and then get back to work. And I think I was lucky enough, really, that enough people knew there wasn't real malice in what I was doing, and I managed to just pull it back.
But, and this is the important point about this conversation tonight,
yeah,
there are limits to comedy, aren't there?
100%. There are limits, and I think... but times are changing very quick, so the limits of what you can say change. I mean, I was one of the first to get cancelled because I think I was like really pushing it just as things were turning really, really strict, and really, you've got to be really careful with what you're saying. But look, now it's even harder as a comedian. Do you know what I mean? It really is. But I learned through it, and I still get it wrong sometimes now.
So what can you joke about now?
Politics.
Well,
no.
That's a tragic comedy. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, you can joke about anything. I think you just got to do it intelligently. And there's some comedians out there that don't really care. Do you know what I mean? You've got like Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais. You'll never see them apologising. You won't see them getting cancelled, because I think once you get to a certain level and you're a certain size.
Yeah, I wondered with Ricky Gervais particularly, whether perhaps we're beginning to see a little bit of pushback and a little bit of
I think he's too big to cancel. I think for me, like I was coming up, I was very new. I was easy to stump out and get rid of. I didn't really have enough time to learn where the line was. I just went straight in.
So there's no bitterness?
Pardon?
There's no bitterness with you about what happened?
I wouldn't say that. I'm still quite bitter about how hard people went in on me. But I can admit that you know, I needed a telling off to sort out my stuff. And luckily, like I said, you know, now I'm back. You know, I've got me tours coming out next year. I've been doing films. I'm back. I'm on GB News.
GB News. You've been doing headliners on GB News.
Where all the best counsellors come to perform. And look, like I say, we all said stupid things when we were younger, and I'm just blessed that I'm back out and I've got the social media following. And I like talking about serious stuff in my comedy now. I like using my platform. Like, for instance, I use my platform heavily now to talk about sobriety, talk about men's mental health, talk about, you know, coping mechanisms with drinking, drugs and stuff like that.
You've also been sort of doing podcasting and a bit of help. I mean, I'm never sure quite, you know, where we go with all this stuff, but you kind of, you know, you're saying to men, it's not a problem to admit you've got a problem.
Yeah, 100%. I think, look, first of all, I was a very lad's lad, so I was involved in a lot of that stuff. And
is that a bad thing?
I think when you've got a big platform and you can be too laddie, my comedy got me in trouble a little bit with that. But being a lad's lad, I don't think it's a bad thing, not at all. But our culture is like very much so with this show. The culture is talking over a pint. The culture with men is really the only time they get together and talk is when they're drinking. And the problem sometimes when that can be is when they want to open up. Or when they've got problems, they associate it with the alcohol. The alcohol becomes, and the drugs become a coping mechanism. When something goes well...
There's no drugs on Talking Pints, I promise you.
Oh, yeah? That's not what you said before the show. No, I'm joking. But, no, and look, what I'm doing right now, because I know I've got a massive lads audience, I've created a podcast called Menace to Sobriety. So anyone out there that's struggling, that thinks they've got an unhealthy relationship with drink or drugs, I talk openly about how I used it to cope and stuff like that. And I think it's important for men to understand that drinking casually, like you are sociably, is fantastic. But if you've got problems in your life and you're turning to that, or that's making it worse, then you can reevaluate your relationship. And there's life outside of alcohol. And I'm just trying to give back a little bit. I believe in karma, and I think now that things are going well for me again, instead of just reaping the rewards from my social media and the films and stuff, I think it's important to give back and try and help the people that are there.
Yeah,
you know
it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, Andrew Tate built this massive global following. And, you know, he was saying, look, let lads be lads. Let men be men. And up to a point, quite a lot of what he said made sense.
Yeah.
And then we stepped clearly into territory where he wasn't even joking.
Yeah.
You know, this was open. He called himself a misogynist, etc. And now, well, goodness knows what will happen to him in the future. But we mustn't... All I wanted to say to you, Daniel, was we don't want to completely eradicate the idea of boys being boys, do we?
No, I think we need to educate boys, educate men, and I think, you know, the banter and manliness and having mates and being together is important. I think it's sorely lacked as well. Not enough men have men around them. Not enough men have good male role models. But the problem is, with myself and someone like Andrew Tate as well, is once you've said stupid stuff in the past, it's very difficult.
But you've been forgiven.
I don't know. I feel like it now. I feel like it. I feel like people are a little bit more open to me, maybe because I've grown up and I've got children and I'm doing positive things. I'm certainly getting a lot more opportunities happening now.
So you're off on tour?
I'm off on tour next year. Let's get cancelled, I'm going to call it. Let's see. I might be back on here saying I'm out again. But I'm off on tour next year. I've got big films coming out. You know, I've been making films that are going well. I'm producing films coming out. Social media's going well. I'm getting gigs. I'm on GB News. I'm happy and I'm keeping it calm.
And the tour, is this sort of theatres? Is it?
Yeah,
where do you do your events?
My last show was at the O2 actually.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've done the Troxy before that, but I'm not sure on the dates and stuff. I've got a proper promoter working with me now, which is nice. It's refreshing to have that again. And yeah, we'll be doing a big tour next year. So, and I just want to be a lot more intelligent, and I want to use the comedy and use the platform to talk about serious stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like this stuff. So,
as a comedian, who do you look up to in the comedy world?
I definitely look up to Ricky Gervais because I think he's got a beautiful way of being offensive, but also making people feel stupid for finding it offensive. I think you can be really intelligent with the way that you deliver comedy. I definitely wasn't back in the day. I just sort of say it how it is. But he really tackles some important issues that people... It's very difficult to joke about stuff that, like, there's a lot of subjects, a lot of things that are going on at the moment, like, for instance, you know, all this transgender stuff, gender stuff, all of this stuff is very scary. I've got 2 daughters. I'm always watching this stuff and very concerned about men that identify as women wandering into women's toilets and being put in women's prisons.
Oh, you're a transphobe.
Exactly. That's what's
got him.
That's what's
He's going to be cancelled again.
But the thing is, you know, you now my views on things are very different because I've got daughters, and now that when I try and talk about these things in a joking fashion, it's like you're in a minefield, you know, and it's very difficult. But I think someone like Ricky Gervais manages to negotiate that perfectly. So I look up to people that are intelligent with the way they put serious points across.
Television, I mean, you know, 70s and 80s used to do comedy in a huge way. Yeah. It was a big part of, you know, ITV, Saturday nights and all the rest of it. Where's it gone? It's almost like... Is comedy now almost sort of underground?
It's mad, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you know, you have to search for stand-up comedy and you have to search... They don't have them, like, big shows and big Saturday night shows where comedy's going... I think everyone's too scared, to be honest with you, but I think we definitely need more of it. We need more of that game show, that comedy game show stuff, you know? Like the old Barrymore stuff. Maybe not Barrymore, but...
Well, again, whoever you talk about, you may...
Yeah, oh, my God, yeah.
You may have a problem, whoever you talk about. And when you see the country today, because one of the things comedians do is observe.
Yeah.
We're not that happy at the minute, are we?
The country is an absolute mess, and I think I'm very in tune with real working class people. You know, my friends are all working class lads. I've got a big group. We've got like a wolf pack group where all the lads are in there talking, and we talk every day about the state of the economy, the state of... But I'll tell you how people feel at the moment, that the government... It doesn't care, you know. You've got the working class people, you've got the nurses, you've got everyone going on strike. The government don't care about them. The government care about stupid things, focusing on stupid things and not the average everyday worker. They're struggling out there. They've got no money, and
I'll tell you what, Daniel. You can be as rude and offensive about politicians as you like, and no one's going to cancel you right at this moment in time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't think people are happy, to be honest with you.
No, nor do I. Well, maybe you can go on tour and cheer them up. Daniel, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.
It's great to be back.
Oh, well done, you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. I've got a few seconds left with you, and yes, that means it's time for Barrage the Farage. You've sent your questions in. I've no idea what they are. Here goes. Anna asks me, what do you think about your colleague remaking Fawlty Towers? Well, I tell you what, I mean, Fawlty Towers is utterly genius, even though they've had to edit 1 or 2 of the lines from the Major. So we hear overnight, yes, John Cleese, who is coming to GB News and going to produce a series of regular shows and interviews, is going to do a remake of Fawlty Towers with his daughter. Now, my view, I'd be very keen to see actually what Daniel thinks in a sec, but my view is very often, you know, you try and remake Dad's Army, you try and remake Reggie Perrin, it's a blooming disaster. And yet, John Cleese is so clever, he might just make it work. Fawlty Towers, rated the best ever sitcom, comedy sitcom. What do you think?
Yeah. No. Personally.
No?
Personally, no.
No, not your favourite?
Not my favourite.
And if Cleese tries to redo it again, can you make it
do
work?
a better job.
You do a better job this time?
I'm round, yeah, that's what I think.
Good Lord, there we are. Yeah, well, they're very odd, some of these people. Next one. I've got time for another one very, very quickly. Viewer asks, do you think Sunak's appointment of Lee Anderson as Deputy Chair is an attempt to get him in line? And, well, either he's trying to silence Lee, or he's saying to them, you don't need to support Richard Tice's Reform UK because we've got Lee Anderson in place. Either way, I see Lee Anderson as a free spirit, you know, working class, says what he thinks, wears his heart on his sleeve, and let's see how long he survives as Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. I don't think it'll be very long. I'm done. I'll be live in Luton tomorrow night. Big audience. Please tune in. For now, it's Mark Dolan.
Nigel, thanks for another brilliant show. Britain will avoid recession this year. So are the experts once again wrong about Brexit Britain? That, plus my big opinion, the Church of England's gone woke. Find out more shortly.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office. The wet and windy weather we've seen across northwest Scotland will clear south over the next 24 hours, followed by further showers in the north, but clear spells in the south. Higher pressure remains to the south. This cold front is an active feature. Some heavy rain and strong winds for a time as it clears Scotland and Northern Ireland. But when it sinks into southern parts of the UK, it weakens considerably and, in fact, no more than an area of cloud and some drizzle by the time it reaches central parts. Ahead of that, a touch of frost in the southeast and to the rear of it as well. A frost forming across North Wales and Northern England, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland it remains blustery, and we'll see further wintry showers pushing in, rain and hail at lower levels, snow over the hills, particularly northern Scotland, another few centimetres for example, and some icy patches to watch out for first thing Thursday. Now the strongest of the winds and the heaviest showers ease during Thursday afternoon, and actually central belt southwards it's mostly dry, with the best of any sunshine developing in the south by the afternoon, 9 or 10 Celsius here, 7 to 8 further north. Then into Thursday evening, we're going to see further showery rain affecting western Scotland, but this time it's light and patchy, and we've got thicker cloud rolling in. Further south, a lot of high cloud, but still enough clear spells to lead to a fairly widespread frost, 1 or 2 Celsius typical in some main urban centres, but in rural parts, I think, down a few degrees below freezing. A bright start, nevertheless, for England and Wales first thing Friday, a cloudier start for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and damp for western hills of Scotland, with the most heavy persistent rainfall affecting northwest Highlands. It's mild, though, the winds coming from the southwest, so temperatures widely in the double figures on Friday, and as we head into the weekend, a lot of cloud around, mostly damp towards the northwest, drier elsewhere, but mild.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News,